Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special broadcast of the Weekly Beat. My name is Dumi Jere. I'm the co-host this week, and I'm coming to you from Johannesburg in South Africa. With me, my beautiful sister, Maggie Mutesi, coming to us from Dakar in Senegal. Maggie, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Dumi. So good to have you back. We missed you last week.
Yeah, it feels like we last spoke like 10 years ago or something.
I know.
And folks, this week we've got a special guest who's going to join us. Now, this brother has done a lot of amazing things, and I'm quite excited to speak to him about this. His name is Obina Okwani. He's coming to us from Kigali in Rwanda. Now, currently, Obi is the Chief Digital Officer at Bank of Kigali PLC, but he has held so many other interesting positions with so many other interesting organizations, big and small, startups and big, and the works, and very excited to speak about this. Obi, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dumi and Maggie. Thanks for having me.
That's good. Take me back to the 22nd of March 2020 when Rwanda became the first country to impose a hard lockdown in the whole continent of Africa due to the surge in the coronavirus pandemic. Where were you? What happened? What do you recall about that day?
Yeah, so interesting. I think that was an interesting turning point for a lot of people. For me, for sure. Yeah. I was visiting Rwanda in March.
You were in Rwanda at the time?
It was meant to be a 2-week trip. I was still at Paystack at the time. Yeah, I was. I ended up in Rwanda. I was still based in Lagos. Yeah. I was still working with Paystack. Yeah. And I came to visit my fiance in Rwanda for 2 weeks in March. Yeah, and I think I came in that week that they announced that flights would stop moving around the continent. So we got extremely lucky. So I got stuck in Rwanda. And I was still working for Paystack, worked remote for about 3 months, and then I made a transition to Bank of Kigali here in Kigali. So yeah, I was trapped in Rwanda for better or for worse.
Yes, I was trapped in Rwanda. I would have loved to get stuck with somebody,
Right? I think the reason why I brought in that element of Rwanda locking down in March 2020, and you starting subsequently a couple of months later at the Bank of Kigali, like obviously the bank still has to continue, but the country is in lockdown. People are not allowed to go to the office. No one is allowed on the streets even anyway. So that made your job a very challenging one. So you are Chief Digital Officer of this bank. You're having to deal with this pandemic that no one knows what it is and what it's going to be like or how long it's going to take. Now, how did you navigate the terrain from a digital perspective, making sure that the bank remains a going concern and that people continue to work?
Yeah, so fortunately at Bank of Kigali, the responsibilities are well distributed. Even branch workers at some point had to stay home until banking was deemed an essential service. And companies like the Bank of Kigali, they had to move very quickly, right? I think there are so many articles that stated how 10 years of digitization progress was made within 1 or 2 years of the pandemic, because a bank like Bank of Kigali or other large institutions in Rwanda and Africa, things like video conferencing, group conferencing, having a calendar system, Office 365, SharePoint, Adobe Signature. These things were not there. Many of them were not there prior to the lockdowns and the restriction of movement. But how do you keep collaborating? For a bank, how do you get documents signed? That's a really big thing for traditional institutions, because usually, memos get carried around the big office for different stakeholders to sign. It's usually like a physical document, but now it's like, okay, you can't send documents. How do you do it? So we ended up becoming customers of Adobe, using a design. Customers of Microsoft. We use Microsoft Teams regularly now. Half of our meetings are remote, depending on what the nature of it is. So yeah, you have organizations that are ensuring that their staff have good internet connection. Prior to the pandemic, whether you had fiber optics or not, that was a luxury, right? But if you're working from home, suddenly it's a utility, it's an essential thing. And if that company wants their staff who are now working remotely to stay productive, fast internet is a non-negotiable. So it changed business models, it changed the way of working, it changed the nature of work. And I actually don't think that I don't think things are going to get rolled back. I think we've discovered some new insights about how to work best.
Oh yeah! Wow. And it's very fascinating that you mention all of these changes because, you and I, all of us on this broadcast currently, we will all agree that the most obvious impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the labor force was essentially the dramatic increase in employees working remotely, and just the rise in the collaboration tools amongst people having to work remotely. But I always say that yes, it's got its benefits. This working remotely, the ability to connect easily. Whereas back in the day, you would have to fly to have a meeting first. You can start those meetings on Zoom, and then you can still then fly later on after 3-4 couple of meetings. Just to solidify things from a business perspective. Going forward, do you think that it's something that might change? I know you just say that it probably will not. We probably will not see a dramatic increase in terms of change. But I don't know. I struggle to imagine a life where for the next 20 years we're just going to be doing the podcast on on Zoom or on this platform that we are on. One day I would love to meet everybody and like, okay, Maggie, you know what? Let's do a tour of Africa. Let's let's go and have record a show in Rwanda, and then from there we go to Uganda and so on and so forth, man. Like, I think seeing people in physical form, like it's much more fun. Yes, technology does do its bit, but that's my take. Yours?
So I don't disagree with you. I also think that nothing beats face-to-face interactions. I think that the best work many times gets done when we can see each other, right? Now, I don't think the ability to work remote is going anywhere. I don't think the best companies in the near future are going to be those that require their staff to come into the office 5 days a week. I think those days are behind us, right? I think if you reflect on, now I'm not a historian on this particular topic, but I just think about the nature of work like 100 years ago when there were no computers and human beings were responsible for doing what computers do now. Bookkeepers, accountants, people who manned the telecom post where there was a physical switchboard, right? In the past, work and location were right. You could literally not be productive. Systems could not work if people were not in a specific location, right? But now that's no longer true, right? But why didn't the way that we work change along with that, right? Now things were already changing because many technology companies and other types of companies, creative companies, had already figured out this whole remote work thing. At Paystack, it was the first company I had worked for where they had several what we called Zoom rooms scattered across the campus, where you could you go to the room. There's an iPad screen that tells you whether or not this room is booked, and then you go inside and there's a whole sound and video kit. There's a big screen, and you just press a button and it takes you into your meeting. Just boom, the screen is on. All your colleagues or your business partners, whoever's attending this meeting, are all there on the screen. and you're there. It's almost like you walk into this room and then you're kind of ported into this virtual meeting.
And that was
and that gave us
before the
tremendous
pandemic.
flexibility, right? Just look, yes. This was long before the pandemic. This was part of the company's culture, which I think many would say is legendary. Paystack, I think, is exemplary in terms of corporate culture, and work-life balance and productivity as well. Paystack, they work at a high rate, and what they build is at the highest quality, which is why they're acquired. Look at our podcast now. Maggie, you're in Senegal. Dumi, you're in Nairobi. I am in Kigali, right? And I just had to step into my home office, turn on my camera. I didn't spend on a flight. I'm not stressing myself out. I'm having a good conversation, right? So I think there are so many advantages, right? And I think the key is flexibility. Because now, that the time required to do work is asymmetrical from the value that's actually created by that work, right? Drafting a document or an article that's going to go out, you might spend 2 weeks on it, but it doesn't matter when during those 2 weeks or where, right? In the end, the article is going to be posted on a website. You don't need to be at a desk to do that, right? And you worked, and then later on, and with technology, or with most jobs now, it's a lot of production. It's a lot of intellect that's going into this. And even if it isn't, personal computing, internet, software, it allows us to create certain things without, it's device agnostic, location agnostic. So, the nature of work has changed. I think the way we work should also change fundamentally. And I think COVID only accelerated a trend that we might have seen mature over the next 10 to 15 years. And it brought it into a space of 1 to 2 years, right? And now we're here. We're not going back.
When we talk about digital skills and all of that, at some point, I'm just thinking, okay, what kind of resources, what kind of human resource, what kind of workers are we really going to have?
No, I think it is disconcerting. Not to make like a moral or philosophical judgment on where we're headed, right? I something recently because I had an epiphany, and if work is now by default remote, right? At least hybrid, where being in the office is not mandatory. It's something that happens seldomly. Then one of the biggest reasons for people moving around on a daily basis disappears. What makes you get out of your house and drive in the morning on a Monday, getting to the office? What causes rush hour? 4 p.m., 7 p.m. every day in every major city around the world, going to the office or returning from the office rather. So if now our lives are more local, you're not driving 30 miles to get to work. Now most people do most things within the vicinity of their community, their home, right? So what do homes start to look like? What do neighborhoods start to look like? That's going to change as well, right? You can't overlook the improvements of the quality of life that remote work has given us. Work-related stress is a killer. I think we all know this. It's a killer that ranks above many other killers. It causes so many things. It causes cancer. It causes a lot of things. And one of the biggest contributors to work-related stress is, I heard this recently, the lack of flexibility around how people do work. And part of that how we work has been time, right? Okay, we have meetings every morning, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., and you have to drive and you have to come on time for those. But what if you could just roll out of bed on your camera, boom, meeting done. People have spoken, right?
Yeah.
Then a mother can have more time with her young children. She can manage her own schedule, plan times around her day where she can do her work, where she can tend to her kids. I think it's better for everyone. It's better for the mom, better for the kid, better for the family, right? I think this is a tremendous benefit, right? And I think to your question about like HR, right? Great question. And as a leader, I asked myself this, and this is actually one of the reasons that was really interesting, right? It's one of the reasons why my experience there was interesting, because at some point after the pandemic, we went 100% remote like everyone else. But Paystack, last I heard, it is still 100% remote. And that Lagos office barely gets any, probably collecting cobwebs, perhaps, And so managed to make that full transition, and they think this is just how they're going to operate. And many of the companies have done the same. And I think the kind of leadership required they're totally different. from the kind of leadership that was required when people were in person. How do you convey charisma? How do you build community and team? And how do you enable teamwork remotely, right? These are, how do you do HR? Like, how do you sense when an employee is unmotivated, right? There are tools for this, but it's a different set of skills, right? I think it also requires a different framework. And maybe once a week, twice a week, there's a town hall and everyone must attend and have their cameras on. Maybe the company mandates that when we do meetings, your camera's on, you come on time, all these things. Like, there's a certain protocol around these things. So the discipline isn't lost, right? It's just managed. And I still think personally, right, my personal opinion, like I said at the beginning, some of the best work gets done in person. Even at the bank, my team, we are very lax with whether they come to the office or not. But what I have observed is that the members are almost always in the office, and they don't have to be, right? But I think the availability of that that flexibility and openness gives them a sense of freedom, because they know that so much more about their experience is under their control.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow, this has been like a very insightful and fascinating conversation, and actually filled with lots of nuggets, and especially from somebody who has had to navigate all of these things in the environment of a big bank. And I'm sure most of our listeners are definitely going to appreciate all of the insights that you shared with us. And I think I just have probably one last question, and in closing, really, your personal opinion, if you were speaking to someone who has just finished high school and they're about to go to university, and so what direction should I take in line with where the world is now going from a work perspective? What is the thing that I should study, or what should I focus on, or what are some of the extra skills that I should equip myself with to make myself more relevant in the job sector come the time when I now apply for a job?
I think it goes without saying that technology skills are really important, and there's a wide spectrum. You can be a software developer. You can be someone who understands how to maintain IT systems like the cloud, AWS, who understands how to take data and community decisions, right?
Yeah.
You can be a project manager. These are skills that are even more important in this day and age, because you can imagine with a scattered team, tracking deadlines is going to be really important, because you don't get to just bump into them at the water cooler and say, "Hey, how's the project going?" No, you really have to follow up with people. I think creative skills as well, writers, tellers, I think they'll still be important, even though AI is doing that now as well. But I still think that's going to be quite important. Musicians, all of that. I still think there's a big chunk of this that we're going to discover. It's going to be emergent. I think the world we're headed into is so much more prosperous than the one we're coming, right? And I think that's there are ups and downs. I think now humanity's at a bit of a low point, like considering Ukraine and the pandemic and everything going on in the world right now. But that's how it is. It's cyclical. But I think overall humanity has made tremendous progress, and we will continue to do so. And this is part of that. The remote working revolution.
Thank you so much, my brother. That was really, really, really insightful. And yeah, this has probably been it ranks high up there amongst the conversations that we've had with folks around work, where we see the world, where we want the world to go, and so on and so forth. So I personally thank you on behalf of everyone else that's busy, that's involved with the podcasts. On that note, folks, we're gonna have to leave it here. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Special thank you to my co-host Maggie, as well as our guest Obina Okwani, the Chief Digital Officer at Bank of Kigali. Please remember to visit our website, mansamedia.africa, for more news about the continent, and please subscribe to our newsletter that comes out every Friday, called The Third Opinion. Please subscribe to that. I am Jimmy Jerry. Until the next time, here's to peace and profit.
you.